go. We'll just go through some common asked questions, some housekeeping items before we get into the content. So yes, this event will be recorded. We'll share it out via email within a couple of days after the finish of the event. We'll kind of be doing a streaming style sort of thing for this event. So we'll take questions throughout. You'll notice there's a Q&A pane on the right side of your screen there. So please go ahead and ask Q&A in the chat, and we'll kind of answer that throughout the session, and we'll also try to save some time for it at the end. And if you have any other specific questions for like your setup or anything super technical or not related to the topics at hand, we have a Discord for you to keep the conversation going, so that link will be on your screen. All right, and as always, check out our community website for future events. Cool. Let's keep going. So we'll do some introductions. My name, as I said, is Jess. I'm on the product marketing team at Cypress, and I'm calling from San Francisco, California, where it is overcast and raining, which is fabulous. But I'm so glad to see you all. My job at Cypress is to oversee the marketing for the open source app, including just go-to-market strategy for new product launches, partnering with teams on research initiatives, and generally helping tell the story of our products to the users and the market. And I've just passed my 1-year anniversary at Cypress, which is exciting. And I'll share a fun fact. Oh, thank you. I see the golf claps. Fun fact is that I am working on establishing like an art career as kind of a second hustle. So I've got, I spent the last 2 weeks of my free time putting in an installation at a gallery in San Francisco in the Mission District. So a lot of work, very rewarding. And yeah, just I'm a big fan of fine art, museums, making art. I'm there for it. All right, I'll pass it off to Filip to introduce himself. Hello, Filip. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. It's almost good evening here in Slovakia, Central Europe. So hi from Europe, everyone. My name is Filip. As you can see on the slide, I'm a Cypress ambassador. I recently left not my company, but company called Slido, where I worked for almost 7 years to sort of head on to a solo educator path. So that's what I will be doing in the next couple of months, maybe years. We'll see how that goes. I mostly teach, blog, do workshops about Cypress. I guess that's why I'm here. But I will be diversifying to more topics, hopefully, but mostly testing and mostly testing with Cypress. So if you're interested, there will be some links. I think there were some links already shared or QR codes, but you can find everything on my page, philiphric.com, everything that I do.
Fabulous. And a fun fact, Filip. Don't think you got
oh,
away
fun
with
fact. I kind of forgot about this. As you mentioned, fun fact, and you mentioned the side hustle. I sort of realized that my side hustle sort of became my main hustle right now. So that's a fun thing. But other fun fact, maybe the fact that I have 4 children. So that's something that's maybe not so public about me, but I guess now it is. So that's a fun fact. It's a lot of fun. So, and it's a fact. So I guess it makes it a fun fact.
That does make it a fun fact. I love it. Thank you, Filip. Eli, hello. Good morning.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
Hey, everybody. Very excited for you to join us today for this webinar. I'm Eli Lucas. I'm the head of developer ecosystem at Cypress. And today I'm just super excited to talk to Filip about some kind of different things that we're going to be doing in Cypress. Maybe not the typical thing that you use Cypress for, but something that's still really viable. I've been doing web development for over 20 years and love it. And I guess my fun fact, I'm gonna kind of steal Filip's as well, as I'm also a father of 4 and I have twins, which makes it seem like a father of, I'm not sure you consider a father of 3 because they're both at the same time, or a father of like 10 just because the chaos is amplified.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Very cool. Very cool. All right, and just to introduce some of our teammates we have joining us in the chat, we have Sean Harris and Ronald Williams joining, so they'll help answer questions. They will, they're amazing. So also, virtual wave to them. Thank you for joining. All right, so let's keep going through it. Today, we are running through API testing with Cypress. So Filip wrote an amazing plugin that we're going to give you an overview of and poke around in. We'll also be using a demo app to kind of, just show you the experience and, again, answer questions along the way. We'll try to leave a little bit of time for Q&A at the end as well, but keep those questions coming, and then we'll close it out. So without further ado, let's dig in. I will stop sharing my screen, and I'll pass it along to Eli and Filip.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Filip, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to navigate you, right? You'll be the one that will be coding.
Right. Yeah. So I asked you here because you did something, and it's causing a little bit of excitement and whatnot in the community and getting a lot of traction going. Want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, it's the plugin. I call it Cypress Plugin API because CY API was already taken by Gleb, who has done like 50 plugins, if not more. I'm probably saying a low number here. But
yes.
He was actually the one who inspired me to write one for myself. So he had this idea of using the UI part of Cypress for showing some data. And I liked his approach, and I was preparing my own Cypress API workshop because I heard that testing API with Cypress was sort of a topic of interest. So I thought, hey, let's give that a go. And I decided I'm going to contribute to his plugin. Because it did a very nice job, but I thought it could look a little nicer. So first I thought I maybe just contribute to that. But then I decided to experiment because I had so much fun with that. And I realized maybe I can take my own approach here. And in the UI in Cypress, that I will actually render a whole view application. So that's what I did. Not sure if we shared the link yet into the chat, but I'm just going to do that right now. And yeah, so that's what it is. Maybe we could show it. Not sure how ready you are.
Yeah,
I still don't see your screen.
Yeah, let me do a little screen sharing here real quick.
All right.
All right. Are we seeing my VS Code?
Yep, I see that.
All right. So I'm going to pull over this application here. So this is an app that we have. It's kind of a demo app that we've been working on to do like webinars and demos and learning resources and stuff like that. It's called Cypress Heroes. And if you ever done the Angular Tour of Heroes demo, this is kind of like our take on it. But basically, you get a list of heroes that you, as a user visiting the site, you can either hire them, or you can like them, or you can hire them. But in order to do that, like you have to log in. So we kind of wanted to make this app a little bit real worldy, but not quite as real worldy as the real world app that you might know. So a little bit lighter than that. But I'll go ahead and log in. So this does have a real back end with a real database and a real API.
But it's running locally on your computer, right?
Right.
By the way, do we have a link for this app so we could maybe share that to the chat, or we do that in the end?
Yes. So the version of this app, as we'll go through it, will be posted up to a GitHub repo, and we'll post that. I know it's in one of the resources slides at the end, but maybe Jess can go and grab it and throw it out to those that are watching right now. But yeah, that will be included. Okay, so I just logged in, and as a user, I can come in here and like a hero, and you can see that their fan count increases when I do so. Or I can hire the hero, and I can deny out of that. Or if I hit yes, you'll see that their saves count increases because we hired them. They went out and did a job. They got another save added to their record.
Nice.
So that's a regular user, and then we also have an admin user, and so there's some stuff that happens in the API to make sure you're like a regular user or admin user. Oh, not now. Password manager. So in here, we get a few additional icons. We can edit the hero. We can delete the hero, or we can also create a new hero. So this app, I have it all hooked up. This is a React app with a node-based backend. And on the client side, I have it all set up already with end-to-end tests and component tests and all that fun kind of stuff. But I thought like it would be kind of fun to bring you on, and maybe we can use your plugin to write some API tests for it.
Yeah, let's take a look into that. So this application, it uses like a REST API, right?
Right.
So we can do the traditional get, post, patch, delete, and all that kind of stuff in our tests. All right.
Let me pull up the code. And so this Node app, it's using Nest.js. I don't know if you're familiar with Nest, but it's a node-based API framework.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of MVC based. And so we got these controllers that we go into. It's actually really inspired by Angular.
Mm-hmm.
But our main endpoint that we're using here is this heroes endpoint, which talks to this heroes controller. And so we have our get requests and then get by a particular ID. This is how we do authorization through the app. We make sure that the user's in an admin role.
Mm-hmm.
We do puts and posts and deletes and patches and all that fun stuff. And I figured this would probably be the one that we'd want to hit.
Yeah, so this represents like different API endpoints. So for example, on line 72 or wherever on line 72, when we have a delete and ID, that's going to represent like an API endpoint with the delete method and some ID probably of the hero, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right.
And the way that it knows its URL endpoints is through this string right here. So this is going to the /heroes endpoint, and all these methods listen to whatever this decorator is on it.
Oh, so for example, that would be like the API URL would be /heroes/ID, whatever the ID is, /avatar, right? For example, on 43, line 43. All right.
Yep, exactly.
Well, this is I've never worked with Nest, but this looks nice. I think I can read it. Not sure if I would be able to create it right now, but it looks like a very clean definition of what the API does.
Okay. I am trying to get back. Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure I got back our webinar because that was hidden behind me. But now I got that up on another screen. Okay, so where do we start?
Let's start with the beginning, right? So we know our API, we know the application. So maybe let's start with the very start, right? Let's install the plugin. Not sure if you have done that already.
No, and so I have. So just a little bit about how this application's set up. It's kind of a monorepo without using any like monorepo library. But we have this client React, which is the front end, and then we have the server, which is the back end. So the only part that has Cypress in it right now is the front end. So this is where all my end-to-end tests and component tests are at.
Wait, we just see the browser. Not sure if you're showing anything else.
You don't see my
heroes. Yeah.
Well, that's super weird. Let me stop sharing and reshare again.
Oh, someone says they saw IDE, which is strange. Well, now I see it. Okay.
Now you see it. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. So yeah, we got this client React, which is the front end, and then we have the server, which is the back end. Mm-hmm. I assume that we're probably going to need to install Cypress into the server folder here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me pull that up here. So here's the server folder, and this is where I have the application running. Over here's the React app. Right here's the Node app. And so I will npm install Cypress. And then we're going to need the plugin, right? And that is npm, is it Cypress API plugin?
Cypress Plugin API.
Plugin API.
So I think there was some convention communicated at the very beginning of Cypress to have all Cypress plugins named as Cypress-plugin and the name of the plugin, but it doesn't seem to hold. We get plugins with all kinds of different names.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so I'll open it up. We'll need to configure it. Okay, so here we got end-to-end testing and component testing. Do you have?
I think we should go with end-to-end testing. Honestly, I don't think I even tested my plugin with component testing.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Sure if it works.
Yeah, this is more like an end-to-end test than a component test. So
yeah.
All right, we'll go through the wizard here, get it all set up, and then we'll leave it here. We'll just get it open, but it's not going to find any specs yet.
Yep.
All right, and then I suppose we'll go into the Cypress folder.
Still don't
now,
have the
typically,
folder, right?
Yeah, typically we'll have an end-to-end folder, but should I make like a API folder or something like that to put them in?
I guess we can do API folder if we are just doing API testing. I get this asked sometimes, like, how do you structure a folder if you have API tests? And what I usually suggest is just call your what normally would be an end-to-end folder or E2E folder, call that tests. But then, of course, you need to define that in the Cypress config file, because by default it goes to E2E folder.
Yeah,
but
let's leave it as E2E for this, so we don't have to mess with any like configuration or anything for this demo. But you might want to name that, especially if you have multiple test types in a project. You might want to call that something different.
Yep. I think it makes it also a little bit easier when you want to, when you also have component tests, and in your configuration you want to set up something for E2E tests and something for component tests. If your folder is called E2E, then you kind of know what you should be setting up. Also with the support E2E file, it's all called E2E, so yeah, I guess it's a good idea to leave it at that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, and we'll create a spec file here. Do you have any recommendations on how to name spec files or how to organize the tests?
I usually hold with the convention of cy.ts, so the spec name cy.ts.
So if we're doing the heroes endpoint, like heroes.cy.ts?
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Yeah, if we're just focusing on API testing, then using the name of the path would make sense.
Okay. So I'll start up a context here, and should be our first test that we use.
Let's get all the heroes. I think that might be a good start here.
Okay. And now, what do I do?
Well, now if you have the plugin installed, which I don't know if you do yet, because we did npm Cypress install, but do you have the plugin already installed?
I think I did the plugin.
Oh yeah, you did. Sorry, you did install that, but I guess it's in the root folder, not in the server package.
Yeah,
you got two package. Oh, you got it here. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Sorry about that. Then the second step, of course, is to include that in the support E2E file. Yeah. So we need to do that. So import Cypress plugin API.
Yep. And so if you're not familiar with using plugins, like there's a registration process that we have to go to so that Cypress is aware that the plugin exists and it exposes the API to the Cy object.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although I hope that everyone who's watching and listening is not avoiding using plugins. Sometimes I hear things like, "Oh, we want an official support for something," but I think one of the great powers of Cypress is that you are able to like create your own code, create your own plugin, and just plug it in and expand Cypress functionality. So please don't hesitate. Not only because I have made a plugin, there are so many awesome plugins out there, and I don't think it's worth hesitating. It's one of the superpowers of Cypress.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I see in the chat that people might be having issues seeing my IDE. If you're not seeing my whole VS Code screen, let me know, and I'll try to go over it again. But
yeah, screen share portion
Judy
works
says
fine with
good.
me. Okay, people are responding.
Okay, getting some thumbs up.
that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the plugin imported.
Yeah.
Is there any other setup that we need to do, or is that it?
No, that's basically it. When you save that, from now on, if everything is set up correctly in VS Code, you should even have the autocomplete for the new command. So this will add CY API command. Oh, and I can already see that. So that's great. So it has all the definitions and all the functionality as a CY request. So if you just looking for adding CY API to all your tests, you can just go ahead and rewrite all your CY request files to CY API commands to CY API. And it should work. Although there's another way of how you can handle that. We can show that later. So yeah.
So it looks like the first parameter is the URL.
Yep.
To the endpoint. So I put that in.
Well, it depends on how you use that. It uses the same sort of syntax as CY request. So you can use the first parameter would be method, the second would be URL, the third would be body. Or if you just use a single parameter, it will make the get request by default to the URL. Or you can pass an object and just define whatever you want. I kind of like that about Cypress commands in general, that you have this sort of a shorthand way of defining your parameters, or you can just pass an object and define everything one by one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good question whether you need to specify the base URL if it's already specified. Not sure if you did that though in Cypress config, right?
Yeah, so I would assume. So you said that this is that it's the same API as like site.request, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so site.request, if you configure a base URL in your configuration file, site.request will use it. I haven't done that yet. I guess I could go and do that real quick. That would just take a moment. Let's say base URL.
All right. Yeah, and this would work for our CY API as well. So it also takes the base URL. In fact, it's not. You can think of it not as a separate command, but sort of CY request plus some additional functionality. Because in the background, it actually uses CY request. It just takes all the arguments and passes it on to CY request command. So it's not like we're not adding that much into the whole Cypress context. We're just adding some functionality. All right. Seems we got our first API call. Let's open it, maybe.
There we go.
All right, we got our test.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
Here we are. Oh, that's a lot of data. So yeah, as I mentioned, so the CY API, it just uses CY request in the background. So it does the exact same thing, but in addition to just calling the API, it's going to use this UI view and it's going to show the data, sort of like maybe you could compare it to tools like Postman, or if you're using VS Code, what's it called? The tool I forgot the name, but there's Thunder Client.
VS Code.
Looks very similar. So
that's something, that's a good point, because that's something I would normally like reach for, like as I'm developing out the API, I would normally reach for like Postman and use Postman to set up like GET requests and post requests and stuff like that. But what I found with that, and maybe I'm not utilizing Postman to its full potential, but like those will just eventually get like outdated and lost in like my history of requests and stuff. With this, like I can almost do the same thing, except I'm writing tests at the same time while I'm kind of like manually testing my API.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So this sort of gives you a visual feedback or visual sort of clue into what the API is returning. So it has this right-left panel layout, but if you would to shrink down the viewport, it would layer them on top, so it's responsive. It's not going to do that in here, I guess, because it keeps the ratio. Cypress window keeps the ratio, but if you were to change the viewport, it would do that. But yeah, you have two panels, right? On the left, you have the request. So you would have your method, your URL. If we were to send some body or some headers or some query parameters, these would all show up as panels in those left panels. And on the right, we have all of the information about the response. So we got the status, duration, even size, which is something which is not really returned by default from CY request. So I do a little calculation in there to sort of give you the response size. So that's a little bit of extra if you want to do some API testing on the size part. And of course the response, right? So you already played with that a little bit. So if you have a JSON response, you can sort of fold the contents of that. You have this different color coding. By the way, I used the color schema from Cypress to make it look like a native, as if that would be an officially supported part of Cypress. So yeah. And if you click on those panels at the top, we got response, headers, and cookies. So you can look into those. And for the cookies, if your server responds with a set cookie header, then that would be shown in a nice little table in here. Not sure if we got the CY heroes, if we have some sort of endpoint, but we can get to that later.
Yeah.
I'd love to jump in here. I know this plugin versus Postman was a question that was asked, so I'm glad you covered that. We received another question about the main difference between this plugin and the CPI, the Cy API plugin from Gleb. Can you talk a little bit about the differences there?
I don't think there are too many differences. I think not sure how would the size comparison be? I think Gleb's plugin is a little bit more lightweight because it just uses less of everything. Plus, it has a nice debug functionality. So if you use debug logs or whatever on your server, then that could help. I'm not really supporting that one at the moment. Maybe if there's a demand for that, I will add that. But in principle, they are very similar, but that's about it. Not sure what else I would add. Like I wanted to do a plugin that would be like visually appealing. So that's I guess the most like visible difference, that it looks different than Gleb's solution.
Okay, sweet. All right, so we got we're returning back. We're making the API call. We can see that we're actually getting back data inside of the Cypress app. How do we test against that, though?
Well, you could test in the same way you would test against CY requests. So if you already did some API testing with Cypress, you already know the answer. If you didn't, then it's actually easy to do. So there are two ways of how you can go about that. So Cypress uses this chaining syntax where one command will pass on information to another. So like a very simple test we can do here is that we can on line 3 we can add an its command, which will take the object that was passed from CY API. So that would contain the whole request, the whole response with the body and status and whatnot. So we can say its and status, and we can take a look into the status of that request and make an assertion with a should command that the status should equal, I believe it was 200, right? If I remember correctly. So yeah, so that should equal 200.
Okay, yeah, not sure what that error was before, but maybe I saved it in a weird spot. Okay, but yeah, we can see that that assertion is now passing.
Yeah, it actually froze for me right now. I just see you typing the should command, but I believe you that it passed.
Yeah,
Not sure if I should refresh.
Unfortunately,
my
I think
browser
our
now.
provider is having some issues today. I'm gonna
Sharing.
Yeah, at least you can see we're live. It's not a recording.
This
It's
is
all live.
absolutely live.
We would edit this out if we were not live.
Which maybe while we're waiting for Eli to pull his screen back up, we received a question about can we replace request with request with API?
Yes, you can, but you actually don't have to do that. So there are a couple of settings. Maybe we could show that. There are a couple of settings for this plugin CY API, which you can just add either in the test configuration, or you can just go to Cypress config TS and set that up. And in here, if you create an env object, there are different options you can pass into there. And there is one thing. So this was actually a feature request. So if you feel like this is missing something, just feel free to go ahead to GitHub and open an issue, and I will do my best to take a look at it as soon as possible. But where is that setting? So you can set up a request mode. So you do request mode and turn that to true. And from now on, if you go back to your spec file, you can just change the CY API to CY request. So what this will do, what the setting will do, is that it will add all of the CY API functionality to request. So it sort of overrides that request, and that way you don't have to like do any edits in your current API testing suite. So
gotcha.
That can make your life easier if you already done your fair share of API testing.
Yeah. Now I wanna do a little test here. I want to see like what the difference looks like, just to show between a request and using the API plugin.
All right. Oh, that's a good comparison, I think. Because you can do both, right? You can use both commands, CY request and CY API. But when you do CY request, in order to see what's inside, you can still see what's inside if you click on your request command on the timeline and open the console. You'll see all of the information, right? So Yeah, there it is. You got the request and you got the yielded attribute, which sort of yields or returns the information that was out there. And you can write your tests onto that. So its status is actually not doing anything extra. It's just taking the status attribute from that yielded object and making an assertion on that.
Okay. And then, yes, and so the biggest difference is that with the API plugin, we get this nice visual representation of what the request and the response look like.
Yeah, so you don't need to open your console, just taking one step out of the whole flow. And then obviously in the timeline, I'm highlighting the method, so you can see the get sort of has this blue pill or whatever, and we got color coding for different methods. So if you use delete, that's of course red. If you use patch, then I think that's orange, and I got a couple of colors here and there.
Cool. All right, so we got that. We're asserting that we got back a 200 request. And then I assume if like we wanted to actually check the data itself inside of our test here, we could say instead of looking at the status, we could look at the body.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
Is that like JSON? Is that like JSON serialized for us and all that fun stuff?
I think if you use its body, at least my approach would be then to use a then command and then use the chai library that's bundled in Cypress to write the assertions for whatever I'm interested in. So you can use the then command with the callback and then write a couple of expect assertions. So for example, expect body, I don't know, maybe
there should be an array
length
that comes back. Should have length. Is there a greater length?
Greater than in that case, I think you need to do expect body length, I believe. I'm just guessing, but I believe you need to assert on the number. So the body length to have greater than, what would that be? 0? Yeah.
All right, let's try that.
Hope I'm right. We'll see. Okay, I guess I wasn't right. Oh, I was. Okay.
Yeah, for some reason.
Sure what that error was.
Yeah, when I'm saving it, it's like erroring on the first time for some reason.
Okay.
Must be some reload issue or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah,
cool.
We got our API test now. So
right,
basically, we are now. Sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
I think we're probably saying the same thing. Like, what would something else look like?
What would something else look like? Well, you can. Well, that's kind of up to you, right? Like, what's the interest you have with your API testing?
Well, from this, from this code sample right here, I can probably like maybe do like all the rest of my Git type requests. But what if we did something that wasn't a Git? Like we could do a post, we could do a delete, something like that. Yeah. But where that might get a little tricky is that the API requires authentication for it. So we need to authenticate and get an access token.
Oh yeah. Let's do that. I think that might be a good example.
Okay. Let's what would be an easy one? Maybe just like a post.
Yeah, I think a post would be a good one. So you said, and I think you demonstrated that at the beginning, right? So you need to be authenticated in order to create a resource. So how would you authenticate? Do we need to call the authentication request as the first one, or do you have your authorization stored somewhere?
No. So like the way it's token based, and so you call the authentication endpoint, and it's going to give you back a token, and then you attach that token to each of the requests that need to be authenticated.
Mhm.
So we would need to do something like to call. Okay, so now I want to do a post request. So
All right.
throw it in like that. Or actually, this probably needs to be the object, right? Method post. And then the URL is /auth, I believe. And then body. So like just like site request, right? So we'll pass in the body.
Yep.
And so this will take in a username and
I see some people in the chat saying that screen froze for them. Not for me then, right now. But if that happens to you, it seems that the solution for that would be to refresh the browser. Sometimes that can help. All right.
okay. And so we'll get this, and then we want to get the token.
Yeah, let's
And
maybe
so-
take it. Let's maybe call it like this, so we actually see the response, and then we can write that then function. All right, so we got create a hero. We have the post auth, and yeah, so we're sending the body, and we can see what username and password we are sending, and we can see the response access token defined, which is good. So what we want to do in order to create that hero is we want to pass that access token in the header of the next request, right?
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So in our then command, we will then just take the response body access token, right?
Yeah. So let's wrap that.
Okay.
Response.body.access token, right?
Yep.
And then we'll alias this to an access token so we can
All right.
access it in the next request. I think. Like, let me know if this is.
Yeah,
not how you would do it,
I think that works. Not sure why is it. Oh, it's probably some ESLint.
Yeah, I got some fairly. This Node app has some fairly stringent ESLint rules.
Yeah. Oh, we got a question. Just a couple of messages above. Sort of peeking into the chat, and I see someone was asking about the usage of then and the callback function. So on line 18, when you use that response, we got a question whether that is like passed on from the previous command or what that is essentially. So basically, the response is an alias, or it's a variable which is used, which basically represents whatever the previous command has passed. So that response would be the whole response with the body and status and everything. And if you scroll up, Eli, when we use the its body and we aliased it body, then that alias could be anything. We call it body because it's a good naming convention to sort of give it a name that this thing is, right? But you could name it anything in here. So it could be heroes or H or B or whatever. That could be. It sort of acts as an alias, and it represents the object that the previous command has passed. So yeah, just to make that clear for some folks asking about that, because I saw like many thumbs up on that message there. So sorry to interrupt, and we can continue. All right, so now we have wrapped, we have aliased that access token, and now we want to create a new hero, right? So we're calling the API again. And what now?
Okay, so I think what I'm having a little bit of a hard time visualizing is how we're going to get access access to this access token to use in the headers. Let me write the rest of the API response here real quick. And so we're going to make another post request. And this post request is going to go to the.
I think you should,
Post URL is going to be going to the heroes endpoint. And then the body is going to be that of a new hero. And so this has like a name. We'll just call it test hero for now. It has a price, how much the user or the hero charges, has the number of saves and number of fans, and then an array of powers, which takes an ID of the power. That's 1 right now. And then we need to do the.
Then we need to pass the header, right?
Yep.
So in order to pass the header, my personal approach would be to either use that CY API within the then function we are opening at line 18.
Like right here.
Then
we have direct access to it.
Yeah, and either like assign the access token to a variable, because right now, like usually I use the alias mostly when I want to access that value sometime later in test. So if there are some commands in between what I wanted to reach and when I want to use it, that's where the alias can be really handy. But if it's like right away I'm using the whatever the previous command has returned, I would use the then command. All right, so in the authorization, we would have the access token, right?
All right, folks, so we've gotten a couple questions on some different topics here.
Oh yeah. Let's touch on those. Although we are almost ready with the request, right? Let's see if it runs, and then we can move to the questions. I'm going to rerun that, and okay, we send it, but we got 403 forbidden. So what was let's debug. That's actually, I like the fact that we have to debug now, because that's a big part of testing as well, right? We need to make sure to read the error and make sure to see what's happening. So as you can see, it actually prints out the request command because it is using the request command in the background. And if we scroll down the error message, I think it should show us the request, right? The full thing. So we had the bearer authorization. We sent that, so that looks good. And what was the response? Forbidden.
Yeah, so forbidden. So it's not like an access token for some reason.
Let's maybe scroll down because I want to reach the very bottom of the message. Forbidden resource. Okay. Well, that's strange.
Let me make sure I spelled everything right.
Yep.
Authorization, bearer, and then the access token. That should be right.
That
we
looks
can
good.
see.
Yeah.
We can see if they get passed.
Yeah. We saw that. We saw that happening in there. Someone is asking whether we should be we should have the admin. Whether we should be signed in as admin, but I don't see a reason why. Or is it?
That is it. Only admins can create new heroes.
Oh, okay. I thought you just need to be signed in.
That was excellent. That's why I like doing live demos, is because when you have an audience, it's like this gigantic pair programming session where people can point out your mistakes.
Yeah. Great, Benny. Thank you for that.
All right, let's give that a try.
Point it out. All right.
I'll give it a refresh again. There we go.
And here we are. Good.
And there we go. And so it got a new ID and then all that other fun stuff. And then if I actually go back over to the app and refresh it, I should see the new hero. Or a couple new heroes.
Test heroes, nice.
Yeah. Now, like in a real app, you're probably going to want to do something where you're like setting up test data and then removing test data and stuff, following like the kind of the regular best practices that you would normally want to use when you're writing it end-to-end tests and you're manipulating data, because you want to make sure that one test doesn't accidentally like interfere with the results of another test. Like, especially like if I was writing a bunch of tests here against Mr. Angular, but then I had a test with that I tried to delete Mr. Angular, then the following test I try to like test with Mr. Angular again, like it's not going to work. So you want to make sure that you're like setting up data and removing data and all that kind of fun stuff using like site tasks and stuff.
That's a whole another topic with like the test data management. It can be a lot.
Cool.
All right. Well, I just wanted to jump in with some questions. Unless you wanted to add something. Sorry, I jumped.
No, I was just transitioning as well. Like I think there's definitely a lot to dig in here. Maybe we should do a part 2 someday. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for joining, and we do want to leave a few minutes here at the end to make sure that we do get to the questions that have popped in.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got a few questions about just use cases. So how about this one? Is there an option to mask the password?
Oh yes, someone actually pointed it out, and I can't believe we are already reaching the end, because that was kind of the thing I wanted to show next, and I thought we're not even like halfway there. But yeah, there is an option in the for the Cypress config, and you can pass an object hide credentials options. You can actually do hide credentials true, and that will do the job for like the username and password, because it like automatically knows some of the conventions that are used for API testing. But you can also pass your own array of keys that you want to hide, and then just instead of seeing that, you will see a bunch of asterisks in there. So yeah, and
so
it's
you're seeing right here, like it will show asterisks instead of the actual password.
Yeah, you can actually set that up in the Cypress config, and it's hide credentials true. So if you set that up, I believe it could already work out of the box.
Is it an environment variable or?
Yeah, exactly like the request mode. Hide credentials equals true. And I believe that would like hide it automatically. But let's see. There is an option to configure that. Oh, it got the password, but the username didn't work. So that one you need to define manually.
Okay. Yeah, but that's pretty cool. And typically, like you probably wouldn't hard code your username and password inside of your tests, like I did here. Yeah. You'd be pulling these out of like environment variables or something as well.
Yeah, exactly. But I believe the concern here is that when Cypress, for example, generates screenshots, you also don't want that to be visible anywhere. Because even if it would be an environment variable, it would show up on that screenshot because we have the browser open. So in that case, you can define which keys you absolutely want to hide, and they will not even appear on the screenshots. And any suggestions here are welcome. In like if you want to hide some more stuff or configure that differently, you're welcome to open an issue.
Awesome. Another question we've got: for a post or put, can you edit the body directly from the Cypress Chrome browser?
No. So I believe that's something where that is a Postman user, right? Because Postman will give you like this whole interface where you can edit stuff, etc. So this plugin will just give you the UI, but you cannot really interact with that. I was thinking about whether that could be done, and I think there might be some ways in the future, but I'll need to think about that, because you can already use like Cypress Studio, right, to click through your UI, and it will generate generate the code. So I believe with the same principle applied, we could do something on the CY API plugin, maybe edit some fields and then run it, and it would just append the code into the test. But that could be complicated. So maybe version 5 or something.
Speaking of, although, yeah, what versions does the plugin support?
Versions of Cypress.
Yeah,
I think
I'm assuming it just has
it
versions,
works
probably.
even with the version before version 10, because one of the first issues was that the sidebar panel did not show the colorful badges correctly. So I fixed that. So I think it works with basically every version. I didn't test them all, but I tested version 9. So I think that should work. Oh, I see one question. Can I answer that? Because I see someone asking about demo on JSON schema validation.
Yeah,
And
let's do it. We're almost at time, so I also want to flash the resources on the screen. I posted them on the chat.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. I wanted to exactly like direct the person to my site, because I will be preparing an API workshop. I wanted to have the landing page ready for today, but I wasn't able to do that. But I will be doing a workshop just on API testing really soon. But on Monday, I will be doing a Cypress core workshop. So if you have if you want to learn, if you're just starting with Cypress, or you're already using Cypress but want to get a deep dive, you can sign up for that. We're starting on Monday, and it's going to be like 4 modules. One is for like 3 hours. So feel free to join in. Yeah, and sorry I jumped into that. Jess, you can continue.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I've pasted the links to resources in chat. We'll also, you can scan this QR code for any future workshops by Filip, which there are plenty of exciting ones. And gosh, we have so many great questions. I want to keep going. But we'll have to, we'll close out the event soon, just to respect everyone's time. Yeah, maybe just a couple of quick hitters if we can fit those in. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to babble.
Is this compatible with a framework like Cucumber? I think that's been asked a couple of times.
I don't see why not. Because if you define in your Cucumber step, if you define your step to be using the CY API command, I think that could work. I am not really heavy on using Cucumber, so I cannot provide you with the details. But I don't see why it would be a problem. I think you can use it.
Yeah. Another question, which I think is a fun one. Does Cypress have a way of ingesting an open API, 3.x spec and generating tests automatically?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Open API 3.x. I would need to study what that is. But not familiar with many test generators besides Cypress Studio, which is record and replay. But yeah, that's all I can say about that. Maybe Eli, you have some insight?
No, I am not all that familiar with Open API as well. But from what I do know of it, there is some code generation opportunities. And more than likely, you can probably code gen it to get it to work.
Mm-hmm.
One question I did see float up in the chat is GraphQL support. Have you tried using GraphQL endpoints with it? I imagine it would. You could probably do it, even though it's might be a little bit awkward because GraphQL everything's pretty much just post requests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do it, but I didn't do excessive testing with GraphQL for this plugin. And I guess what needs to be done here is mostly the formatting of the response and also of the request. So I didn't do any work in that area, but if the community demands it and maybe helps out a little, I'd be happy to add the support for GraphQL as well.
Very cool. And I'm seeing something else in chat from Anil that works fine in Cucumber. He's using Cucumber for his project. So that's
cool. So there you have it.
Yep. Thank you for that.
And
info.
another confirmation about GraphQL as well. But color coding is not the same. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Cool. If we have, I don't know, we can answer a couple more questions if we want to. I know, the event is at time, so we'll close out shortly, but maybe, just another.
Yep. I would just say head over to our Discord and join our Discord, and we can hop in there and answer any more questions that you might have.
Yes, our team is in there. Filip is all over our Discord, so you'll find him around for some follow-up questions. And these are fantastic questions. Thanks everyone for participating and joining us today. Keep your eyes out for more resources from Filip coming soon.
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you very much, Filip, for being our guest on this webinar, and we really appreciate it, and hope everybody has an excellent day. Happy testing.
Happy testing, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for coming. Bye-bye.
Always a pleasure. Bye.